Everybody, hope you're having a great day, a great night. I mean, you must be because you're hanging out with JBM Sports Media. We got Ben, we got Joe, we got myself. So we did part one of our MLB free agent predictions as far as the hitters go. We promised you we were going to do the pitching aspect of it, so here we are, guys. We gotta. I think we're going to have a couple wild ones here, to be honest with you. But listen, let's just break right into it. Ben, lead the way. What do we got?
As always, we have our honorable mentions, the ones that didn't crack. Well, I guess this is technically top 11, top 12. So we have some honorable mentions. We'll go through them really quickly, give our predictions. Not really that in depth, unlike the other ones. But yeah, let's start it off right here. Here's the honorable mentions. We'll start off with my guy, Brandon Woodruff. The Brewers did extend the qualifying offer, which is $22 million, I believe. I think, I'll just start off. I think he's going to accept the qualifying offer. He got injured at the end of the season. Before he got injured, his numbers were tailing off a little bit, and he was returning. He didn't have a full season. I think he's going to accept the $22 million. That's just my opinion. I think he returns with the Brewers.
I mean, it doesn't sound like it's something that's far-fetched. It probably is something that he'll wind up taking, but I'm trying to think outside the box here and think maybe that the Boston Red Sox actually could use a starting pitcher, and I think that they'd offer a 2-year deal, to be honest with you. And I think maybe they'd entice Woodruff to, instead of taking the 1-year qualifying, maybe take the extra year and, stick with a team and have the extra year under your belt. I could see them really trying to make him a third starter there, maybe a fourth starter, and really mix him into the rotation, adding another righty to that rotation. So I'm gonna go outside the box and say the Red Sox trying to make something happen here.
I don't think that's that crazy. I'm going to agree with Brew, though. I think Woodruff is going to take the qualifying offer. I think it's going to be more of a prove-it-year deal. And what better way to prove it than a $22 million qualifying offer? So he's not going to get that if he signed a 1-year deal elsewhere, unless he wants to leave Milwaukee. So I think that could be his best option. I know we have the, apparent what could be a strike coming up in 2027. So this could hurt him. But in reality, like Ben said, he's been hurt. He's been, he came back from Tommy John, had a couple of setbacks. His season was delayed. So I think he does take the qualifying offer as a prove it type deal. Forgive me.
All right, next we have a relief pitcher in Raciel Iglesias. His first half wasn't that good. His second half, though, if you look at his splits, his second half was way better. And he did finish what was it, JV? I believe a 3-point what ERA?
It was a 3.21 in 70 games. So he showed that he's durable and that, he had, like you said, he had a great second half.
All right, I'll throw it to JV. Where do you think this guy lands? Does he return to the Braves? Who you got?
No, I actually think he's going to the Yankees. I think the Yankees are going to make their first bullpen piece. Somebody that could go in the 8th inning behind Bednar. And then they'll figure out the 7th inning. But I think this is a guy that could really set you up and get you to Bednar. And he could give you a lot of games. Look, if you look at his last 3 years, he's pitched in 58, 66, 70 games last year. So he's pitched in 4 or 5 games more every year. So he's proved that he can be a workhorse. And I think the Yankees need to address their bullpen. And they don't need a closer type guy right now. I think Bednar is good enough to be their closer moving forward for, a couple of years. But I think a guy like Iglesias really solidifies that back end of the bullpen.
I don't hate it, to be honest. I mean, I hate it as a Mets fan, but I don't hate it. I think that's solid talking points. I went a little nuts here. Okay. This is my prediction, but I don't know how realistic it is, but why not? I think he's going to go back to the Angels because you got Kenley Jansen, who he was on a 1-year deal. We don't know where he's going to end up. They got a whole closer, and I could see that being maybe a little reunion.
It's not a bad idea, yeah.
I don't mind that. I actually have him going to – well, I had him actually at first glance, but I'll save it for another reliever later on. I thought he was going to go to the Angels as well. I actually think he's going to the Diamondbacks. I think he's going to the Diamondbacks because, as you know, Martinez is going to be out for the year, still recovering from TJ. AJ Puck had the shoulder surgery. They need some bullpen depth. So I got him going to Arizona, me personally. But let's move on to Max Scherzer, Mad Max, who had a pretty good Game 7 start that was. Electric, to say the least. JV, where do you think Mad Max is going to go?
I think it's going to be his last year, and I think he ends it with one of his early teams that he started with, which is the Detroit Tigers. I think they're going to need some type of back-end rotation help, and I think maybe 1 year of Scherzer makes sense. They bring him back on like a 1 year, $15-16 million deal, and I think he ends it with Detroit, and he comes back to the American League for his final year. I think he's probably done after next year.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm genuinely torn on Max Scherzer. I'm in between him staying put in Toronto because of how close they got. I mean, he pitched phenomenal in that Game 7. He really did. You know what you're getting with him. You know what you're getting experience wise. So maybe he could be a back end piece to that rotation to maintain. But Jay, I also do agree with you. I actually can see him going back to Detroit. I'm kind of at a 50-50 split between both. If I really had to choose, I do lean Detroit. I figure why not? Go back to where it all started and end your career.
It didn't take long. It didn't take long at all. I actually did have him going back to an old team. I do have him going back to the Washington Nationals. I have Scherzer going back to the Nationals, being that mentor piece that I feel like they need in that rotation big time. I really thought we were all going to agree on one. I was close to the Tigers as well, but I would really like the comeback story, him going back to the team who won the World Series with. That'd be pretty cool. Mackenzie Gore's still there. Yeah, bring an old veteran guy like Scherzer. He could maybe, if he finished off his career in Detroit, that'd be dope. If he finished off his career in Washington, that'll be dope. Could see him staying in Toronto, but regardless, I do think this is going to be his last year, like Jay said. Let's move on to a guy that Ro loves, Ryan Helsley. Check it out. JV, where you got Hell's Bells landing?
I got him landing back in the NL Central, but with the Pittsburgh Pirates. I think Pittsburgh needs a closer. I think after losing Bednar, they could probably secure him for a couple of few bucks less than what his market would have actually been if he would have pitched well with the Mets. I'm sure his market would have been through the roof. But now you could probably save a couple of dollars, like I said, on him, and you could probably get him on the cheap. And I think Pittsburgh loves doing things on the cheap, and they probably offer him an incentive that they'll just wind up cutting him in the middle of September. So but I could see them going after Helsley because his familiarity with the NL Central, and obviously he has some success there. So maybe they bring him on I see a 1 or 2 year deal maybe with Pittsburgh.
He was another guy I was actually torn with. I lean more the other way. The Pirates was the team that I leaned against. I had the Pirates. It made sense for everything you literally just said. A cheap option, and no, they will not cut him in September for incentive reasons. They will trade him at the deadline. Let's be honest.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
But I have him going to a similar situation, just a little bit better, and he's going to remain in the NL East. I think he goes to the Nationals. I think they also need a closer. Yep. They traded theirs away, and at the deadline as well. Why not? I mean, listen, they're still up and coming. I think they're very close, and if they're going to be somewhat of a contender potentially, if they sneak into a wild card, they're going to need somebody legitimate at the back end of that bullpen to close down games. Helsley has success as a closer. He was not the closer with the Mets. I think that's the reason why he failed. And if it goes sour with the Nationals, then they use him as a trade chip.
Yeah. I actually, when you said NL East, I thought we were going to have the same prediction right here. I actually have them going to the Marlins. I think they need a closer as well. Maybe they spend a little bit more money. Yeah, I think it'd be a good little bounce back fit. Worst case scenario, they trade him at the deadline. That'll be obviously, that'll actually be the best case scenario for them since they're still kind of retooling. I know they were on the verge of, competing for a wild card spot, not fully there, but it could be an exciting year for them. Go and get your closer and hope that, he bounces back because that second half with the Mets was absolutely atrocious. Let's move on to our last honorable mention, Nick Martinez. JV, where you got him going?
I actually have him staying put. I have him staying in Cincy. I think Cincy values him a lot in that rotation. I think there's going to be definitely a nice market for him, but I think he's going to be in a market where you're not going to have to overpay, and I don't think people are going to want to overpay for a guy like Nick Martinez. But I think it keeps Cincy in talks where they'll be able to make a fair enough offer to retain his services. So I'm going to say that he stays with Cincy because I think once they plug him back into rotation, they really don't have to do much to that rotation. They have a pretty good starting five. So I think if they could focus on getting Nick back, their rotation will be solidified. So I see him staying put.
I think that's not a bad bad guess there. I like it. Unfortunately, I disagree with you, but I agree with you from a previous prediction that you made, Joe. And I actually have him going to Boston. I have him on the back end of that rotation. I listen, Boston may be on this list again later on for me. Maybe I'm going to tease that just a bit, but look, Nick Martinez has the versatility. He can go out of the bullpen. He can be a starter. I think he could be more a 4-5 type guy for them. They need to add to that rotation. They also need to add to the bullpen. Why not kill two birds with one stone? So I think that's an option for the Red Sox.
It's not a bad look, actually.
It really depends what type of money he wants. I'll say that as well. If he wants a little bit of a bigger contract, which I think he could get. I mean, is he going to be like? I know they had used him as a relief pitcher. You know, he was a bulk inning guy.
I was going to say like 2 for 26, maybe could wrap it up.
I mean, yeah. And
I think that's fair. He's going to be a back end rotation piece. He's
similar to AAV to Clay Holmes. To be honest,
maybe a little bit more because, like, I'm gonna go with 13 million, something like that.
I'm gonna go with the team that's on the up. I do believe. Shout out my boy White Sox Louie. I'm gonna go with the Chicago White Sox for Nick Martinez. Okay. I know. Shout out the White Sox. They're probably not going to get another mention in this video, I think. So we'll leave it at that. Nick Martinez, though, I feel like he could be like a veteran presence, kind of the same way Martin Perez was for him, was for them last season. So I actually like that move for the White Sox. Getting another guy that could, bring the mentorship there. These guys are young at the end of the day. And the teams, you saw there was some growing stuff going on with Colson Montgomery. It was a good, I guess, bright side of the season, but I like Nick Martinez to the south side of Chicago. So let's move on now to the main guys. One guy that nobody expected to be here. I kid you not, I didn't. And that is Shota Imanaga. JV, where do you have Mr. Top Shota going?
I haven't gone to the San Francisco Giants. I think they could use a lefty, and I think, Buster Posey is going to be really aggressive when it comes to trying to get a big-name guy. I think he's a big-name guy. Imanaga is a fly ball pitcher. I think that works well in San Francisco because it's a big ballpark, and he gets a lot of pop outs. So I think that would work, to his favor and to the Giants' favor. And like I said, I think Posey's going to be aggressive here. I think he's going to go after Shota. I think it's going to be, something that they're both going to agree on. And I could see him in San Francisco for 2026.
So I have a repeat team, and I mentioned them just not that long ago. I think Imanaga ends up with the Red Sox. I think they're going to have another starting pitcher. I think it would be more along the lines of a number 3 option. Listen, I don't know if we're going to end up doing maybe a trade prediction video in the future, but if I'm going to throw this out there, I think the Red Sox are going to make a huge trade for a number 2 to, back up Garrett Crochet. So, I mean, if they're going to do that, you're really going to want to put the hammer down on that rotation. You give me Garrett Crochet, a legitimate number 2 of a trade candidate that's out there, and Shota as your number 3, and potentially Nick Martinez as a 4-5 coming out of the bullpen. I kind of really like that rotation. I think the Red Sox are going to go essentially all in, obviously, because if you guys watched the last video, I may or may not have predicted them to sign one of the big fishes. I'm not going to reveal it here because you got to go watch that one. So
watch it.
That's where I'm going with the Red Sox.
I like that. Honestly, do like that. I actually have an NL West team as well, just like JV. I got the San Diego Padres. However, I think, not trying to spoil it. Michael King, we'll talk about him a little bit later. I don't think he's coming back. So I do think that they're going to replace, bring a lefty. Darvish is still there. He's not going to pitch, unfortunately. We saw he went through TJ again. So that's that. I think they're going to bring in Imanaga, though. I think that'll be a really good addition for the Padres. That rotation was a little bit iffy towards the end of the season. And obviously, they didn't make it out the wild card. Bringing Imanaga, and I think that'll be pretty good. Next, let's talk about a guy that did get traded at the trade deadline. We have Merrill Kelly. Some options I have for him are the Diamondbacks, going back to the D-backs, going back to the Rangers, the Red Sox, and the Reds. What you got, JV?
I'm actually staying in Texas. I think Texas is going to need they're going to need him because God forbid DeGrom goes down. You don't know how Evaldi, is going to come back, and he had some injury issues as well towards the middle of the year that kept him out the rest of 2025. So you traded for him. I think you're going to have to try to keep him. So I think a 3-year deal or maybe even a 4-year deal for a guy like Kelly would get it done. And I think Texas should be serious about trying to keep him because, like I said, it'll strengthen their rotation that has always question marks with DeGrom. Like I said, you don't know what you're going to get from DeGrom, even though he was healthy for the majority of the season, which was great to see, for baseball and for the Rangers. So hopefully he could stay healthy again. But to me, he's a big piece, and I think they should really consider retaining him. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say that he stays in Texas.
I really like that pick. I really do, and I was on the fence with Texas. I could have saw a return there. I just don't know. So what I am going to say is to a previous guy that we already discussed, Nick Martinez leaving Cincinnati. They're going to have a void there. I like him in Cincinnati. I like that move as maybe an upgrade from Nick Martinez. Listen, they're also an up-and-coming team. Listen, they just snuck into the playoffs. We all know how that played out. I'm a Mets fan, blah, blah, blah. Move on. So, yeah, I do like that move for Cincinnati and to maybe bolster up and maybe upgrade themselves a little bit in the rotation.
I do have him going back to a previous team, and that's the Diamondbacks. I got him going back to the D-backs. Honestly, I think it's just going to be one of those things where it's either Gallen. I have a feeling either Gallen or him is going to go back, whether it's obviously Gallen didn't get traded, but I can see a world where Gallen stays. I actually think Kelly's going to be the one that stays or that goes back, I guess, since he did get traded. And I think it's going to be a nice 2-3 year deal, maybe opt out after the second year. And yeah, I do see that because obviously Corbin Burns is going to be, I don't know if he's missing the whole year with TJ. Maybe he comes back towards the end of the year. Not sure, but they got to fill a void in that starting rotation. And like I said, I think Merrill Kelly goes back to Arizona, but let's talk about his previous starting pitching rotation mate and Zac Gallen. And a few options I have for him are going back to the D-backs, the Philadelphia Phillies, LA Angels, and the Toronto Blue Jays. What you got, JV?
Listen, he's an East Coast kid. He's from New Jersey. I think he was born a Yankee fan, except I think he's going to the Mets. I think Steve Cohen is actually going to really focus on trying to get a starter, and I think one of them would be a nice right-handed pitcher that needs a change of scenery. Why not go after a guy like Zac Gallen? He had one bad season. He's been a really good starter in this league for a couple of years, and like I said, I think he'd be able to handle New York. And I think he'd be able to pitch in the NL East, honestly. I see this being a happy marriage, to be honest with you. I think you could get him, doesn't have to be $30 million a year. I think maybe 4 years, 110 could lock him up. That would be $23 million a year. I think that's pretty formidable. You could throw him right in the middle of that rotation. And I think it's a solid pick. I think it'd be a solid pickup for the Mets. So I'm going to say he goes to the Mets.
Wow. I did not expect that. I do agree with you in some sense, though. East Coast kid. Like you said, he grew up a Yankee fan. Fortunately, I don't see a fit in New York. So I will say this. I think he's going to Philadelphia. I think he's going to be a Philly. I think it just fits. Aaron Nola's been kind of shaky over the last year or so. When Nola's on, he's great. But they need to kind of lock down another righty in that rotation, I think. And, I don't know if that means that Nola could be on his way out. I highly doubt it. I don't think he's going anywhere, but I think they need a formidable righty in that rotation. I just see him as a Philly. It fits in my mind. I don't know why.
It actually is a good fit. That makes a lot of sense, though.
Yeah, I actually have the same pick as you, Ro. I agree with you. I think he's going to Philly. I think I kind of felt that way before the season started. I felt like East Coast kid, like you said, JV. He's going back. He's going to Philly. He's going to Philly, and especially because we're going to talk about Ranger in a little bit. I think Gallen would be a great addition to that Philadelphia rotation. We don't know what's going to happen with Wheeler. Hopefully he does pitch again. But Nola, like you said, he's been up, down, big downs, actually. They do have Luzardo. He's inconsistent. Bring in a veteran like Gallen, I think that'd be a must. All right, so let's go into another guy talking about the Phillies. We have Ranger Suarez, the Ranger. What you got, JV, for Ranger?
I actually have him staying in Philly. I think, due to Zach Wheeler being out, with his surgery, and like you said, Aaron Nola, what's going to happen with him? He had a very, very inconsistent season, which, affected them moving forward. I think you're going to have to bring back a piece that's been consistent. So I think the safe play would go, pick up Ranger Suarez. I actually was teetering with him in San Diego because I have San Diego, losing Dylan Cease. So I thought maybe they pivot for Suarez. That would be somebody on their radar. But I'm going to say that he stays in Philly. Maybe he gets a little bit of a hometown discount, and they can still add a guy like Zac Gallen, like you had mentioned, bro. So that would still make sense for them to bolster the rotation. So I think they're going to go and try to keep a guy like Ranger on that squad just because it's something that's familiar, and he's been one of the more consistent lefties in that rotation.
So I'm finally going to bring this team up. I have not yet, and I think this is going to be the splash for them. I think it makes sense. I think – listen, Suarez is a very solid pitcher. He's pitched in big moments, and it doesn't seem to affect him. And there's a team that is begging for the big moment and to get into the dance again. I think he goes San Francisco Giants. I like that fit for him. I especially love that fit because get him out of the NL East. I don't want to see him in a Philly uniform. Get him out. Let's see him maybe once a year. I'd be happy with that. I like Ranger Suarez going to the Giants.
Another one I agree with Ro. I was gonna say I think Posey's gonna cook with this one, bro. I mean, I know JV had said Imanaga. I think they're gonna get a lefty, but I think it's gonna be in the form of Ranger Suarez, and I think they won't mind spending a little bit more for a guy like this. Adding him with Logan Webb, I think that would be really dope. A really good duo. Yeah, I have Ranger Suarez going to the Giants. However that contract looks like, I'm not sure. But yeah, I really do like that. Let's go into another Suarez, but this time a relief pitcher. We have Robert Suarez, former closer of the San Diego Padres. A few fits I have for him are the Detroit Tigers, the New York Mets, if they lose Diaz, obviously. Dodgers, Marlins, Tampa Bay. What you got, JV?
I really hate to say this, but
no,
I think he's going to the Dodgers.
No.
Yeah, they need a closer. They need a closer. They're gonna and listen. They want to go back to back to back. They want that third World Series. It's gonna be in the form of reshaping and reforming that pen. Why not start with a guy like Suarez? Why not steal him from a team like the Padres, which is your rival in that division, and have them have to suffer and have that sting even worse? So I really think they're gonna go balls to the wall for a guy like Suarez to be their closer. He was phenomenal. I think he had 40 saves last year. He's somebody that could really, really help that team, and I think that the Dodgers are really going to make every effort possible to get him, and I think they do get him.
Could I have two answers?
Go ahead.
There's logic to everything Jay just said. That makes complete sense, and I could see the Dodgers doing this. This is the Dodgers being the Dodgers and getting a guy like Robert Suarez. I really see that happening. I also see them in on somebody else. We're going to get to him in a little bit.
Okay.
I can see both sides of that. My other pick, and it's kind of a option A to option B type thing, the Mets. If Diaz walks, if Diaz goes away and signs elsewhere, could be the Dodgers. Maybe that's who they go after. Time will tell. I think it's either Los Angeles or the New York Mets. And it's going to depend on the Edwin Diaz market, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah, I actually have a team that I do have listed on here. I have the Tigers. I think the Tigers need a closer really bad. I mean, Will Vest was good. He was reliable, but there was moments where Kyle Finnegan didn't look the best as well in that setup role. I feel like they could give him a nice 2-year, maybe up the AAV if you guys want, but I think Detroit got to go get a closer this offseason, and I think Robert Suarez, in the form of Robert Suarez, that's going to be the way to go for them. I would really like that fit for them in general because, like I said, not that Will Vest wasn't reliable, but go get yourself a solidified closer that could get you 40 saves per season, honestly.
Yeah. And if I can, real quick, you mentioned them, and I love that you brought up Finnegan. And he just because his name was mentioned and the team is on here where I see him going, I see Finnegan going to Tampa. I know that's a random wild card one. It's just it was brought up, and I see that being a nice cheap option for them. I had to get that out there because it would have stayed up here and I would have been driving myself nuts. So I had to get that out.
I like that. I really do like that. All right, let's move on to one of JV's former guys, Michael King. JV, where you got him going? Back to Yankees, maybe?
Yeah. I have him going back to the Yankees.
Oh
I think I do. I really do. I think that's the splash that they make. Like I said, they got their bullpen guy, and they need to address the rotation because if you think about it, Cole's out until probably mid-May. He's probably not going to be ready for the season, so he's probably going to need another 6 weeks. And then you have Rodon is going to miss about 6 or 7 starts as well. So why not bring a guy like Michael King who could probably replace Will Warren? I don't think Will Warren is going to be I don't think his future lies in that rotation. I think it's either in the bullpen or he gets traded. So I think they're going to bring back a guy like Michael King. Brian Cashman loved Michael King. He actually didn't involve him in the Soto trade at first. The Padres had actually said, this is great, but you have to add Michael King to the package. So he did everything he could to not have to trade Michael King. And he actually even said that after the trade was done. Mm-hmm. He said the one that stings the most is Michael King. And he said, I'd wish them good luck or whatever. But I do see a reunion here where the Yankees bring him back on a potential 3 or 4 year deal.
I don't know about that one. I don't. Oh, I see a logic though. It makes sense. It makes sense. It does. But but I disagree. I actually see him going to Arizona. I see that being their splash. I think, with the absence now of Gallen, and also Gallen was a little underwhelming last year. They were in a very weird spot because up until the end, I mean, they sold at the deadline, and the final series of the year, they were still in it. Maybe if a guy like Gallen maybe pitched just a little better, they could have snuck in. I think that's the splash that Arizona makes. I think they need a new frontline guy at the helm. I mean, they're going to get Corbin Burns back, but it's going to take him a little time to, obviously coming off the Tommy John surgery. I think he's going to be more towards the middle to end second half of the season. So I think they're going to need a solid number one to kind of get them through it. And I think they're in a situation where they're not like a rebuild. It was more like a retool because, like I said, they sold at the deadline and they were still right there. So they have a bunch of young talent on that team still. They have contracts in there that they necessarily don't want to waste. I mean, you got Carroll locked up. You got Ketel Marte if he doesn't get traded. And you don't want to waste that time that you got these guys locked up for. So I could see them going for a frontline guy and Michael King being the answer.
I like that. That's some good reasoning behind it, to be honest. I have an NL East team actually getting Michael King. I think this is, and I already picked them in this video to get a pitcher. So this is going to be two pitchers because they can't keep throwing jobbers like Mitchell Parker out there. And that is the Washington Nationals. I think the Nationals are going to also go get a guy like Michael King. And here's my reasoning behind it. He didn't have the best year and he wasn't healthy. I don't think he's necessarily going to get the contract he wants. So I think he's going to do a 2-year, opt out after the first. Obviously, I know the strike and everything looming. I get that. But I don't think he's generally going to get that 4-year deal that he might want. Like, I think that could be a possible thing. And if that's the case, Washington, even a 2-year deal, I mean, like I said, 2-year, maybe 40, 2-year 35, something upwards, up like that. And I can see the Nationals doing this because, like I said, you got to improve to that rotation. I mean, we had them as like one of the teams that we saw improving last year, and they did the complete opposite. They jobbed effortlessly. And I mean, something has to change. They do have young talent there that, adding a guy like Michael King, and I had Scherzer as well going to the Nationals with Mackenzie Gore. You got to bolster that rotation eventually. So that's why I like Michael King to the Washington Nationals.
I don't hate that. I don't hate that at all.
JB, let's go on to one of your favorite pitchers this season, Devin Williams. Let's go, JB. What you got?
I actually see him going to Atlanta. I think they need a closer. I think he goes back to the National League, and I think they're going to give him the money. I actually see the Yankees trying. I do see the Yankees trying to retain him as a mid relief, seventh inning guy, but he's not going to get the money that he's probably looking for. I will say this: I won't be surprised if he does wind up with the Yankees. I don't, because maybe they can get him on the cheap, and he could try to revitalize his career and maybe become a closer the following year. But I do see there is a need for a closer for some teams, and I think Atlanta, in order for them to fight in that NL East, they're going to have to fix that pen. So why not try to give Devin Williams a shot?
So this was a team that Brew brought up earlier, and his reasoning was they needed a closer, and I thought it was a fair point. I see the Marlins.
I like that.
I see the Marlins. I see him in Miami. I think it just fits. The Marlins are up and coming. The Nationals and the Marlins, two teams that they got a lot of young talent, and they're headed in the right direction. I mean, the Marlins played really well that second half. If they could revitalize that and bring that into 2026, they're going to need a closer to do it. They're going to need somebody legitimate. Now, I know Williams struggled in the beginning. We all saw how he was. It seemed he found himself in the second half. He was a lot better. I think it was just maybe the pressure of New York. It just didn't work for him. It happens. Listen, not everybody is meant to pitch here. Sonny Gray, for example. I mean, he had some of those struggles in New York, and then he's revitalized himself as well. I think it's a similar story for Devin Williams, and I see him in Miami.
I do think he gets revitalized as well in the form of the help of Jeremy Hefner, and I think he's going to the Braves, JV. I think you are.
Wow.
Dagger, he threw Jeremy Hefner in there to hurt me, guys. I'm just letting you know that right now.
I wasn't expecting that at all. He
mentioned Jeremy Hefner to hurt me.
So I think he's going to the Braves, though. I think he's going to be one of the best closers this upcoming year, bro. I think you're about to see the redemption year of Devin Williams. Put him there with Atlanta. I really like that thought process. When JV said the Braves, I was like, yo, me and him thought the same because I think he could revamp himself right there with the Braves. Like I said, Hefner's there. I think that'll be big for him too, bro. Throw that cutter again, man. Let's go with Dylan. Let's go with me and Rose most overrated player, Dylan Cease. JV, what you got for Cease?
Oh, this has the Baltimore Orioles written all over it. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's got the Orioles written all over it. This is going to be their splash. This is like them signing Charlie Morton. I mean, this is going to be like them saying, "Hey guys, look, we got a pitcher," and it's like
we got a pitcher.
That yeah, it's just that's what the Baltimore Orioles do. I just feel like they promise you the sun and the stars, and they give you absolutely nothing, and you're sitting there waiting, and all of a sudden you're in the middle of a tornado, and your team wins 65 games. So it's like, Dylan Cease to me is a piece, but they're going to use him as the guy. He's going to be the guy. He's going to be their number one or number two, and I don't think it's going to be enough, and I don't think he's going to fare well in the AL East, honestly. He's going to go through Toronto, Boston, New York. New York, the Yankees, that list just come out where they just won the AL Silver Slugger, best offensive team in the American League award, whatever that was. So him in the AL it looks like a disaster, but I can see Baltimore really trying to make a move and getting him.
That does make a lot of sense. It really does. Because I think you hit the nail on the head. That is a very Baltimore Orioles thing to do. I disagree. And I think this is a very, very Los Angeles Angels thing to do. I think they are going to take Dylan Cease, and I think they are going to overpay. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I have been saying this for we're getting close to about a year. If he didn't get traded in the offseason and he actually experienced free agency, when Cease got here, he had Los Angeles Angels overpay written all over him. And that's what I see happening. Listen, I'm not trying to rip Dylan Cease. He's not a bad pitcher, but I just don't think he's as good as advertised.
No,
I don't. I think there's a little too much hype. I think he's a little too much overrated.
Yep.
I think he is a solid piece. Yes. He needs to go behind a solid, solidified 1A, not touching me type guy. He is not a number one in my opinion, and I think he's going to command and get number one money. And what an Angels thing to do.
Yep,
he's going to the Angels.
Yeah. I do think he's going to go back to an organization he was previously with, and that is the Chicago Cubs. I think he's going back, and he started his career. I know he didn't play there technically. He got traded, but I think he's going back to Chicago, going with the Cubs. I think especially if they lose Imanaga, they're going to need another pitcher to bolster that rotation. They're probably going to be all like, all right, we're not going to get Tucker. We're not going to, get Imanaga back. Let's get Cease. That's our signing. Let's boost up our money and go get Dylan Cease. And, I'll love it as a Brewers fan because, go ahead. Go get that overrated guy. So let's go on to a guy, though. I do believe that we should all have the same answer on this one, right? We should. Edwin Diaz, I'm talking about. But we'll see. JV, what you got?
The Mets. I mean, this is a guy that they're not going to let go. That he's a guy that they're going to negotiate with, and he's not going to leave the building until pen is to paper. So I have him staying with the Mets.
I completely agree with that. I think he's honestly since the trade and coming over, he had the fantastic year in Seattle. He came over here. He's literally been dragged through the mud and then deemed the golden boy in a sense, closing out games for the Mets. He has bounced up and down. He had that horrible injury in the WBC. I think he loves pitching in New York. I think he loves pitching for this organization. I don't see him leaving, but, and I mentioned it before with the whole Robert Suarez thing.
No.
That would be the reason why the Mets go Robert Suarez. Because if the Dodgers really do love him, they will throw stupid money at him, in my opinion. But in reality, I also just don't believe it's going to be enough, and it's going to be enough to pry him away from the Mets. I think he stays put.
I agree. I think he's staying with the Mets. And hopefully, his brother getting cut by the Dodgers kind of helps him not go to the Dodgers.
That could be cool. A thing.
So, yes, I do have Edwin Diaz going back to the Mets. I don't see a way you know what? I kind of was intrigued by the Toronto aspect of it, I'll be honest, because it's like, do you want to roll with Hoffman being your closer again? I don't know. I
I think
mean,
they are.
yeah, and that's just so
Yeah.
like it's not bad, but like his second half wasn't good. So I was like, maybe they could throw down money at Diaz, but I think Cohen's not going to let that guy leave. Like JV said, they're going to be in the room together. What you want, you got it. All right. The rest is that. I think he might stay with the Mets for the rest of his career, to be honest. I mean, Diaz just comes off like that. The trumpets, everything. The guy has aura. What could I say? Let's go on. I can't believe this guy's the number one pitcher in this market. Let's go on to Framber Valdez. JB, what you got for him, bro?
I actually have him going to Toronto. I think because Toronto is going to lose Scherzer, they'll shed some money there, and they could offer him a 4-year deal. I think 4 years, $100 million gets it done, $25 million a year. And I also believe Gossman is coming up on his final year, or maybe back into his deal as well. So Chris Bassett is another guy we don't know what's going to happen with him. So I think they're going to need another big arm. And in order to get back to the playoffs and the World Series again, they're going to need somebody to really man the top part of that rotation. And why not go after a guy like Valdez, who's pitched in the AL? He's pitched in big games, World Series games. He's familiar with that division, and the AL in general. So I think they make a splash and they go after Valdez and they get him.
Listen, the logic there makes a lot of sense, and I do like it, and it does. I do like it, but I disagree. I'm going to go with a team that has been mentioned by me. I think they're already going to make a splash in the starting pitcher market, and I think they're going to do it again because I think they're losing a lefty. So I think they're going to gain one. He's going to Philly.
Oh, wow.
I see that because Philly, their window to an extent is starting to close a little bit. Depending on what they do in the offseason. I mean, let's be real. They have a ton of free agents in Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber. They have a lot of pieces, a lot of potential moving parts. So we don't know what they're going to look like. I think essentially what they're going to do, they're going to completely bolster their rotation. And I think this is the way to do it. I think it's an upgrade from Ranger. I have him moving away. If you guys remember, obviously, I have him going to San Francisco. So I think they're going to need to replace him. I think they're going to make two big splashes. They're going to get a righty and a lefty to bolster that rotation and be formidable. Gallen and Framber Valdez will be a Philadelphia Philly, and believe me, I hate to go down this road, but to me, it just makes sense.
Yeah, I was down to two AL teams. I was down to the LA Angels because I think that would be their dumb move. Well, not dumb because Valdez isn't like bad, but like how the Angels, I think they'll give him exactly and probably more than what he actually does deserve.
Yeah.
And I was actually as well thinking about the Blue Jays, and I'm going with the Blue Jays because I think they tasted that Game 7 and how close they were there. But I think they do need another guy in that rotation, and adding Valdez to that Blue Jays rotation, Bieber opted in. You still have Gosman for one more year. Savage has obviously been a highlight. Add Valdez to that rotation. How could you not be considered the number one to come out of the AL again, in my opinion? So I really like Valdez to the Blue Jays. I think JV, you sold it pretty good as well. Real quick, let us know what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys agree with us? Do you guys disagree with our predictions? Let us know your guys' predictions by all means. JV, Mike, you guys got anything you guys want to throw out there?
No, I just can't wait till this actually heats up and we can see like where we land, like with some of our predictions. I think it's going to be fun. So, it's a great show like always, fellas. This was good.
Yeah, guys, everybody out there watching, we do very much appreciate you. Just to keep you guys informed and updated. When the off season does start to heat up, we are going to be here. So outside of maybe the big markets and the big guys and all that type of stuff, we're going to be here as well. We're going to be covering every move that does happen, breaking down contracts, breaking down where guys went. And guess what? We just did a predictions video, so we're going to take it a step further. If you don't think that one of our picks signs to the teams that we chose, and we're not going to sit here and do an episode and clip that and say, "Ha ha, I was right," and then Brew's going to pull up something and say, "Ha ha, you were dead wrong." Of course, we're going to do that because we want to have fun. We want to keep you guys entertained. And again, like always, we appreciate you here. We appreciate the views, the likes, the comments, the shares, and the subscriptions. Keep it up, please.
One thing I do want to say before we do exit out on a more so sad and somber note, thoughts and prayers out to Alex Vessia and his wife and his family.
Absolutely.
I do want to point that out there. It's absolutely devastating seeing that news come out yesterday. There's no words that could describe what he's going through, but obviously I just want to send thoughts and prayers, my condolences out to his family and send all the strength, God willing, that these guys,
Absolutely.
it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I was sick to my stomach. The three of us were. We were talking about this in a group text. That was horrible. That was horrible. I can't even imagine that. I'm relatively a new dad. Jay's a dad. You know, I can't even imagine what that family is going through. Thoughts, prayers, condolences, everything possible. You know, and I love what the Dodgers did, and I love what Toronto did in the middle of a World Series. You know, they shouted their respects to him. They had his number on their hat, things like that. That it's beyond words. It really is beyond words. So, bro, I'm glad you brought that to light. For those that you know maybe don't know or haven't seen it, just horrible.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we're all united as a baseball family. We all wish nothing but the best for each other. And, you know, when something like this happens, everybody rallies around. And it's just really unfortunate, really sad.
Yeah, that hurt. It hurt. And it just, I just can't.
No,
if we can, not really, so, you know, obviously. And then maybe it's such a way like that. Guys, like I said, we really do appreciate everything you guys are bringing to the table. We appreciate the fact that you guys like us enough to subscribe to us, to watch us again, watch separate videos that we're doing. We're doing our absolute best. We're grinding, and honestly, we're working our asses off to give out the best content possible. So listen, if you guys are entertained and like us that much, listen, like, follow, share us to your neighbors, your best friends, your brothers, your sisters. I don't care who it is. We appreciate the views. We appreciate what you guys do. And guys, please have a great day.
Appreciate you guys.